The rain wasn't just falling. It was hammering against the glass of the Skyline restaurant, turning the lights of the Boston Harbor into a watery blur. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocatingly perfect. The pop of champagne corks, the jazz band playing soft covers, the smell of expensive perfume and truffle oil. But all I could feel was the floor dropping out from under me as I watched Julian's lips move, delivering the sentences that were systematically dismantling my future. I can't do this, Maya. I know it's New Year's Eve and I know how this looks, but I can't go through with it. The diamond on my left hand suddenly felt like a shackle, heavy and cold. Around us, people were wearing glittery hats and checking their watches, counting down the hours until midnight, talking about resolutions and fresh starts. It was December 31st. We were supposed to be toasting to our wedding year. In 4 months, I was supposed to be wearing white and saying, "I do." Go through with what? I asked. My voice sounded calm, almost clinical. 5 years of managing high-stakes corporate events had taught me how to wear a mask even when the building was burning down. Julian looked pained, twisting his napkin. The marriage. I'm in love with someone else. He finally looked at me, and I saw the one thing I hadn't expected. Peace. He looked unburdened. I care about you, Maya. You're brilliant, but I don't feel the spark anymore. It's not right to drag you into a marriage built on obligation. The waiter arrived then, oblivious, placing our entrees down. Filet mignon for him, sea bass for me, with the flourish of a man expecting a big tip on a holiday. He didn't see that my universe had just collapsed. To him, we were just table 14. Who is she? I asked the moment the waiter left. Julian flinched. That flinch was the only confirmation I needed. Her name is Paige. She's the new consultant. It just happened. I didn't plan for it. I didn't want to hurt you. He reached out as if to comfort me, then stopped halfway. I can't marry you when my heart is with her. I should have screamed. I should have flipped the table or thrown my expensive Cabernet in his face. But I just sat there, staring at the man I'd planned a mortgage and a family with, and I felt hollow. A vacuum where my heart used to be. Maybe I had ignored the signs. The late nights at the office, the distracted phone calls, the way he stopped holding my hand in public. I had been so focused on the logistics, the venue, the caterers, the timeline, that I forgot to check if the groom was still present. Keep the ring, he whispered. Pawn it. Consider it severance. That was the spark. The anger finally flared, sharp and hot. How noble of you, I said, my voice dripping with ice. Letting me keep the souvenir of your betrayal. Maya, please. No. I stood up. The chair screeched against the hardwood, turning heads. You don't get to manage my reaction, Julian. You don't get to feel like a good guy for destroying my life 5 hours before the ball drops. I wrenched the ring off. It slid over my knuckle too easily, as if it knew it didn't belong there, and I set it on the white tablecloth with a dull thud. Happy New Year, Julian. I grabbed my clutch and coat and walked out before the stinging in my eyes could turn into tears. I wasn't going to cry for him. Not here. Not now. The wind hit me like a physical blow when I stepped onto the street. The rain had turned to sleet, stinging my cheeks. The city was alive with chaotic energy. Partygoers shouting, taxis honking, fireworks testing the sky in the distance. It was the biggest party of the year, and I had just been discarded like wrapping paper. I started walking. I didn't know where. I just needed to put pavement between me and that restaurant, between me and the wreckage of my perfect life. My phone vibrated. Julian, probably checking if I was suicidal, or maybe asking for the parking validation. I silenced it. The historic streets of Back Bay blurred. Storefronts glittered with silver and gold streamers. Everyone was rushing toward warmth, toward love, toward a midnight kiss. My toes were freezing in my heels. I realized I'd left my scarf at the table, but I kept moving. If I stopped, the reality would catch up to me. I was 29, single, and homeless, technically. I lived in Julian's condo. My parents were on a cruise in the Mediterranean. My friends were all at couples parties I was supposed to be attending with Julian. I was completely, utterly alone. I found myself standing in front of a heavy wooden door in an alleyway I didn't recognize. There was no sign, just a brass handle and the faint sound of a bass guitar thumping through the brick. I pushed inside, desperate for heat. It was a jazz lounge. Moody, dark, filled with smoke and velvet. It was crowded, but in a quiet, brooding way. The perfect place for people hiding from the mandatory joy of the holiday. I found a stool at the far end of the mahogany bar, tucked in the shadows. "What can I get you?" The bartender was older, wearing a vest, with a face that said he didn't judge. "Tequila. Double. No salt, no lime." He didn't blink. He just poured the gold liquid and slid it over. I took a drink, welcoming the burn. It grounded me. My phone buzzed again. My sister this time. "Happy New Year's Eve. Can't wait for the wedding updates." I turned the phone off completely. I couldn't explain it yet. I couldn't say the words out loud. "Rough night for a celebration." The voice came from my right. It was deep, textured, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Maybe Eastern European? I turned and saw a man who took up too much oxygen in the room. He was sitting 2 seats away, nursing a tumbler of amber liquid. He was wearing a charcoal wool coat that looked tailored, and his presence was heavy. That's the only word for it. He had dark hair, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes that were a startling cold gray, like a winter storm. Everything about him signaled danger. Wealth, yes, but the kind of wealth that doesn't sign checks, it gives orders. "You could say that," I muttered, turning back to my drink. I wasn't in the mood for company. He didn't take the hint. He shifted 1 stool closer. He smelled like rain, expensive scotch, and leather. "Let me guess," he said, his voice low. "Husband? Boyfriend? Someone made the mistake of hurting you on a holiday." I huffed, a dry, humorless sound. "Fiancé, ex-fiancé, about 20 minutes ago. And you're wondering what was wrong with you?" I looked at him sharply. "Excuse me? You're wondering what you did?" he continued, his gray eyes locking onto mine. "You're replaying the tapes, searching for the mistake. But here is the secret. You didn't make one." "You don't know me," I said defensively. "I know people, and I know fools. The man who let you walk out into the cold tonight is a fool." He said it with such absolute authority that I paused. "Are you trying to pick me up?" I asked, blunt. Because honestly, my life just imploded, and I have zero energy for this. The corner of his mouth ticked up. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a devastating one. "I'm not picking you up. I'm offering an intervention." "An intervention? Do you really want to sit here, alone, counting down the seconds until a new year begins in an empty apartment, crying into cheap tequila?" He finished his drink and signaled for another. "What's the alternative?" I asked. "Come with me. I don't even know your name." "Adrian," he said. He didn't offer a last name. He just held out a hand. It was large, scarred across the knuckles. "I'm Maya." "Well, Maya, you have a choice. Go home and mourn a life that wasn't real anyway. Or let me buy you a proper dinner and show you that tonight doesn't have to be a tragedy." Every instinct I had, the safe, corporate, rule-following instincts that had ruled my life for years, screamed no. This man was a stranger. He looked dangerous. But playing it safe had gotten me dumped on New Year's Eve. "Dinner," I said, surprised by my own voice, but nowhere with white tablecloths. "I'm done with that scene. I know a place." He stood up, towering over me, and offered his arm. "Shall we salvage the night?" I took his arm. His coat was warm, his muscle hard beneath it. Felt solid. Real. We walked out of the bar and back into the biting cold. A sleek black sedan was idling at the curb, illegally parked. A large man in a suit was already opening the back door. "You have a driver?" I asked, hesitating. "It simplifies things." Adrian guided me into the leather interior. It smelled like new car and cedar. "Lev, take us to the vault," Adrian commanded. The driver nodded once, silent, and merged into the chaotic traffic. I sat back, my heart hammering. I was in a car with a stranger. I had no idea where I was going. "You're not what I expected for tonight," I said, watching the city lights streak by. And what did you expect? Adrian turned to face me. The streetlights washed over his sharp features. To be bored. To be surrounded by sycophants wanting favors. To pretend I give a damn about the holiday. He looked at me, his gaze dropping to my lips for a fraction of a second. Finding a woman who looks like she's ready to burn the world down? That is a pleasant surprise. I don't want to burn the world down, I whispered. I wanted it to be real. My relationship. I wanted it to be real. Real is rare, Adrian said darkly. In my line of work, real is expensive. And dangerous. What line of work is that? He paused. Logistics. Security. Problem solving. That sounds like a cover for something illegal. He laughed then, a low rumble in his chest. You are sharp, Maya. Dangerous and sharp. The car pulled up to an unmarked steel door in the industrial district. No valet. No sign. Trust me? He asked. I've known you for 30 minutes. No. Good. That's smart. He opened the door. Come anyway. Inside it wasn't a restaurant. It was a private cellar. Stone walls, candlelight, heavy velvet drapes. There was only one table occupied, and the staff moved like ghosts. The owner, a stern-looking woman, rushed over and kissed Adrian on both cheeks, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Russian? Serbian? We were seated in a private alcove. The food started coming without us ordering. Rich, savory dishes. Spiced meats, dumplings, dark wine that tasted like velvet. For 2 hours, I forgot about Julian. Adrian asked me about my life, my work, my dreams. Not the polite cocktail party questions, but probing, intense questions. Why do you stay in the shadows? He asked me. You plan the events, you make others look good. Why not step into the light? It's safer back there, I admitted. Safety is an illusion, he said, refilling my glass. As you learned tonight. As midnight approached, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his face hardened. The charm vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating mask. We have to go, he said abruptly. Is everything okay? Just business. A minor friction. He paid with a wave of his hand, no bill arrived, and we were back in the car. But this time, the vibe was different. Tense. Where are we going? A club I own. I need to make an appearance. You'll stay by my side. We arrived at a massive venue downtown. The bass was shaking the pavement. The line was around the block, but the bouncers parted for Adrian like the Red Sea. We didn't go to the dance floor. We went up a private elevator to a glass-walled VIP balcony overlooking the chaos. The room was filled with men who looked like sharks and women who looked like trophies. When Adrian walked in, the energy shifted. Respect. Fear. He sat me on a plush sofa and didn't let go of my hand. He pulled me into his side. A man with a scar running down his neck approached, whispering something urgent to Adrian. Adrian's eyes narrowed. He whispered back a command that sounded like a death sentence. The man looked at me, then back at Adrian. And her. She's with me, Adrian said. His voice carried over the music. She is under my protection. He looked at me then, his hand tightening on my waist. Do you want to leave, Maya? I can have Lev take you anywhere. A hotel. A friend. I looked at the chaos below. I looked at the dangerous men in the room. And then I thought about my empty, quiet life that had just been shattered. I don't want to be alone tonight, I said. Then you won't be. He stood up, pulling me with him. Let's go. Not here. Where? My home. The one place I don't have to perform. We left through a back exit. The drive was silent, charging toward the harbor. We ended up at a penthouse that occupied the entire top floor of a skyscraper. Glass walls, minimalist furniture. The view of the city was breathtaking and cold. I need you to understand, Adrian said, stopping me in the foyer. He didn't turn on the lights. The glow from the city was enough. My world, it has gravity, pulls things in. If you stay tonight, if you cross this threshold with me, I cannot promise you can just walk away tomorrow, and go back to being a corporate planner. Are you warning me? I am giving you an out. Last chance. I looked at his face. The hunger there. The loneliness that matched my own. I'm tired of running away, I said. I'm staying. He closed the distance between us. He cupped my face, his thumbs tracing my cheekbones. Then you are mine, he whispered. You are under my protection. No one touches you. No one hurts you. Not Julian. Not anyone. He kissed me. It wasn't a polite New Year's kiss. It was possessive. Tasted like danger and whiskey and ruin. And as the fireworks finally exploded over the harbor, signaling the start of a new year, I knew one thing for certain. The safe, predictable Maya was gone, and I had no idea who was going to take her place. I woke up to the smell of espresso and the blinding glare of the sun bouncing off the Atlantic Ocean. For a split second, I forgot. I reached across the bed, expecting to feel Julian's flannel pajamas. Instead, my hand brushed against silk sheets that probably cost more than my car. Then the memories flooded back. The restaurant, the breakup, the bar. Adrian. I sat up, clutching the duvet to my chest. The room was massive, decorated in slate and chrome. I was alone in the bed, but my dress, the navy blue silk one I'd worn to get dumped in, was neatly folded on a chair nearby. I spotted a note on the nightstand. Urgent meeting. Lev will take you wherever you need to go. I felt a strange pang of disappointment. What did I expect? That the mysterious crime lord would be making me pancakes in an apron? I dressed quickly, my head pounding with a champagne hangover. The penthouse was silent. I found the kitchen, where a spread of pastries and fruit was waiting, but I couldn't eat. I needed to get back to reality. I needed to figure out where I was going to live. When I stepped off the private elevator in the lobby, Lev, the driver from last night, was waiting like a statue. Good morning, Ms. Maya, he grunted. Mr. Adrian instructed me to take you home. Home? I laughed bitterly. I don't really have one of those right now. The address on your ID, then? I nodded, defeated. Yeah, take me there. The ride back to the condo I shared with Julian was a blur. Every mile that put distance between me and Adrian's world felt like I was waking up from a fever dream. That dangerous electric connection. Maybe it was just the alcohol. Maybe he was just a rich guy bored on New Year's Eve. But when Lev pulled the car up to the curb of my building, he handed me a small card. It was black with just a phone number embossed in silver. No name. He said to call. If you need anything. I won't, I said, trying to be strong. But thank you. I walked into my building, the doorman giving me a pitying look. He probably knew. Julian had probably told everyone that I took a deep breath and unlocked the door to apartment 4B. I expected silence. I expected to pack my boxes in peace while Julian was at his parents' house for the traditional New Year's Day brunch. Instead, I walked into a war zone. Julian was there, and he wasn't alone. Sitting on my beige sofa, drinking coffee out of my favorite mug, was Paige, the consultant, the woman he left me for. She was petite, blonde, and looked effortlessly refreshed, wearing one of Julian's oversized hoodies. The rage that hit me was blinding. You have got to be kidding me? I said, dropping my keys on the counter. Julian jumped up, looking guilty. Paige just looked bored. Maya, Julian stammered. I didn't think you'd come back until later. You didn't come home last night. I was busy not jumping off a bridge, I snapped. What is she doing here? We needed to talk about the logistics, Julian said, shifting into his corporate voice. Since you're here, we should rip the Band-Aid off. Logistics? The lease is in my name, Maya. You know that. And Paige needs a place closer to the city. So, I stared at him. You want me to move out? Today? It's New Year's Day. Well, you can't stay here, Paige chimed in. Her voice was high and nasally. It would be super awkward. Awkward. I walked toward her, and for the first time in my life I wanted to hit someone. I bought that sofa. I painted these walls. You think you can just slide into my life 12 hours after he ended it? Maya, stop. Julian stepped between us, holding his hands up. Don't be dramatic. I'll write you a check for the furniture. Just pack your essentials and go. I'll have the rest sent to your parents. My parents are in Italy, I shouted. I have nowhere to go, Julian. That's not my problem anymore, he said cold, hard. You're a professional. Figure it out. I stood there, trembling. The betrayal was one thing. The cruelty was another. He wasn't just breaking my heart. He was erasing me. I turned to storm into the bedroom to pack a bag, but Julian grabbed my arm. Key first, he demanded. I don't want you coming back in here when we're out. Let go of me, I hissed. Give me the key, Maya. His grip tightened. It hurt. Suddenly, the front door, which I hadn't locked, swung open. The air in the room changed instantly. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. I believe the lady asked you to let go. We all froze. Adrian was standing in the doorway. He wasn't wearing the tuxedo from last night. He was in a black turtleneck and a long wool coat, looking like a grim reaper who shopped on Fifth Avenue. 2 massive bodyguards stood behind him in the hallway. Who the hell are you? Julian asked, his voice cracking. He dropped my arm, but he tried to puff his chest out. Adrian didn't even look at Julian. He walked straight to me, his gray eyes scanning my face, then my arm where Julian had grabbed me. Did he hurt you? Adrian asked softly. I'm fine, I whispered, shocked. What are you doing here? I forgot to give you something, he said. Then he finally turned to Julian. The look on Adrian's face was terrifying. It wasn't anger. It was the look a boot gives an ant. You must be the fool, Adrian said. This is private property, Julian sputtered. I'm calling the police. Go ahead, Adrian said calmly. He walked over to the coffee table, picked up the mug Paige was drinking from, looked at it with disgust, and dropped it on the floor. It shattered. Paige shrieked. Who are you? Julian demanded again, though he was backing away now. I am the man who is currently buying this building. Adrian lied, or maybe he wasn't lying. With him, I couldn't tell. And I have a strict policy against tenants who assault women. I didn't assault her. She's my ex. She is my guest, Adrian corrected. His voice dropped an octave. And you are currently trespassing. Trespassing? I live here. My name is on the lease. Adrian snapped his fingers. One of the bodyguards stepped forward and handed Adrian a file folder. Adrian tossed it onto the kitchen island. Your lease has a clause about subletting and conduct. The management company, which I own a majority stake in as of, 9 a.m. this morning, has decided to terminate your contract immediately. My jaw dropped. He bought the management company? In 3 hours? Julian looked at the file, pale as a ghost. This is insane. You can't do this. I just did, Adrian said. He stepped into Julian's personal space, towering over him. You have 1 hour to vacate. You take nothing but your clothes. The furniture stays. The artwork stays. Because you owe Ms. Maya for pain and suffering. This is illegal, Paige squeaked. Adrian turned his cold gaze to her. Young lady, if I were you, I would leave now before I start looking into your background. I'm sure a consultant like you has skeletons. Paige didn't hesitate. She grabbed her purse and ran out the door without even looking at Julian. Paige! Julian called after her, then turned back to us, sweating. Look, man, I don't know who you are, but 1 hour. Adrian checked his watch. Or my associates will help you pack. And they are not known for their gentle touch. Julian looked at the bodyguards, then at me. He looked small, pathetic. You're crazy, Julian muttered to me. You're sleeping with a psycho. Get out, I said, and it felt good. Julian grabbed his coat and fled to the bedroom to throw things into a suitcase. Silence fell over the living room. I looked at Adrian. He was adjusting his cufflinks, looking entirely unbothered by the fact that he just evicted a man on a holiday. Did you really buy the management company? I asked. Does it matter? He smirked. You can't just solve things like this. It's too much. He hurt you, Adrian said, his expression sobering. He reached out and brushed his thumb over the red mark on my arm. In my world, that is a capital offense. I can't stay here, I said, looking around the apartment. It's tainted now. He was here with her. I know, Adrian said. That's why I didn't come to help you keep the apartment. Then why are you here? To help you pack, he said. You're moving in with me. I blinked. What? No. Adrian, we met yesterday. I can't move in with a criminal, he supplied helpfully. A stranger. I corrected. We aren't strangers, Maya. Not after last night. He stepped closer, and the air between us crackled again. And besides, I have a proposition for you. A job. A job. I need someone to organize my life, my public image, my events. You're the best in the city, aren't you? Yes, I am. Good. Then work for me. Live in the penthouse. Name your salary. I'll double it. Why? I asked, searching his eyes. Why are you doing this? He leaned down, his lips inches from my ear. Because I have many enemies, Maya. And for the first time in a decade, I found something I want to keep. I need you close to keep you safe. I should have said no. I should have run after Julian and begged for sanity. But looking at the shattered mug on the floor and the man who had burned the world down for me, I have a lot of shoes, I said. Adrian smiled. I have a lot of closets. Most people move in with a boyfriend after a year of dating, a few shared holidays, and a lot of discussions about cabinet space. I moved in with a dangerous stranger less than 24 hours after meeting him, with my entire life packed into 10 cardboard boxes by a silent Russian bodyguard named Lev. The penthouse was different in the daylight. Last night, it had been a shelter from the storm. Today, it felt like a fortress. The elevator required a retinal scan. The windows were thick, bulletproof, I realized with a shiver. Your wing is to the left, Adrian said, walking in behind me. He had changed into a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up, exposing a tattoo on his forearm that looked like a constellation of scars. My wing, I asked, clutching my purse. Bedroom, bath, office. I had it stocked. I walked into the room he pointed to and stopped dead. That IT wasn't just stocked. It was curated. The closet was filled. Not with my clothes, which were still in the boxes, but with new ones. Silk blouses, tailored trousers, cashmere sweaters. All in neutral tones. All screaming power. I don't understand, I said, running my hand over a blazer that probably cost more than my student loans. How did you know my size? My taste. Adrian leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms. I told you, I'm in logistics. Details are my business. This is too much, Adrian. I can't accept this. It's a uniform, he said smoothly. If you are going to represent me, you need to look the part. You are no longer the fiancé of a mid-level marketing manager. You are the director of operations for the Petrov Group. The Petrov Group? I raised an eyebrow. Sounds vague. Intentionally so. He walked over to the desk in the room and tapped a sleek black laptop. Your first assignment is already waiting. I felt a spark of professional curiosity override my fear. I walked to the desk. The Winter Solstice Gala, he said. It happens every year. The city's elite, politicians, old money. Usually it's a bore. This year, I'm hosting it. Okay, I said, scanning the calendar. When is it? Saturday. I choked on air. Saturday? That's 4 days away. A gala of that size takes 6 months to plan. That is why I hired you, he said, his voice devoid of sympathy but full of challenge. The previous planner resigned. Abruptly, the vendors are panicked. The guest list is a mess. Fix it. He dropped a heavy black credit card on the desk. Unlimited budget. Make me look like a saint, Maya. I need the city to love me this weekend. Why? I asked, narrowing my eyes. What happens on Sunday? His face darkened. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Focus on Saturday, was all he said. Then he turned and left. For the next 3 days, I didn't see Adrian. I saw Lev, who drove me around, and I saw the staff who brought me espresso every 2 hours. I threw myself into the work. It was the only thing keeping me sane. If I stopped moving, I'd remember that I was heartbroken and living with a crime lord. So I worked. I fired the incompetent caterer. I bullied the florist into securing 5,000 white hydrangeas. I redesigned the lighting schematic on a napkin. I was in my element. I was good at this. On Thursday afternoon, I was at the venue, a historic opera house downtown, supervising the stage setup. No, the velvet ropes need to be silver, not gold. I was shouting into my phone, marching toward the loading dock. Gold is tacky. Adrian hates tacky. I paused. Adrian hates tacky. When had I started knowing his preferences? I stepped out onto the back alley to get some air. The loading dock was quiet, cluttered with crates. I hung up the phone and took a deep breath of the freezing January air. "You have a good eye," a voice said from the shadows. I spun around. A man was leaning against a dumpster, smoking a thin cigarette. He was dressed expensively like Adrian, but where Adrian was cold and sharp, this man felt slimy. He wore a camel coat and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Excuse me," I said, stepping back toward the door. "This is a private area." I know, he took a drag. "I'm on the guest list. Or I was. Until your boss bought the venue and scratched my name off." "I don't know who you are," I said, my hand gripping the door handle. "I'm an old friend of Adrian's. We used to run similar circles." He pushed off the wall and took a step toward me. "My name is Silas." "I have to go," I said, yanking the door open. "Tell him something for me," Silas called out. His voice wasn't loud, but it stopped me. I looked back. "Tell him that parading a pretty new girlfriend around won't distract us. We know what he's moving through the port on Sunday." My blood ran cold. "I'm his event planner," I stammered. Silas laughed. A dry, rasping sound. "Is that what he told you? Sweetheart, men like Adrian don't hire women like you for your planning skills. Your insurance. You're a soft spot." He flicked his cigarette at my feet. "Enjoy the party, Maya. It might be the last one." I slammed the door and ran. I didn't stop running until I found Lev by the SUV out front. "Home," I gasped, trembling. "Now." When we got back to the penthouse, I stormed past the security, past the maid, and straight into Adrian's office. He was on a call, speaking rapid-fire Russian. When he saw my face, he hung up immediately. "What happened?" He was across the room in 2 seconds, his hands on my shoulders. "Are you hurt?" "Who is Silas?" I demanded. Adrian went perfectly still. His hands tightened on my shoulders, almost bruising. "Where did you hear that name?" His voice was a low growl. "He was at the venue. In the alley. He knew my name, Adrian. He knew about Sunday." Adrian cursed, a harsh sound, and turned away, running a hand through his hair. "Lev was supposed to sweep the perimeter. He said I was insurance," I said, my voice shaking. "He said you're moving something through the port. Is that what this is? Am I just a human shield for some drug deal?" Adrian spun back around, his gray eyes blazing. "Do not insult me," he snapped. "I don't deal in drugs. And you are not a shield. Then what am I? Because I'm scared? Adrian, I'm planning a party for a man I don't know. And I'm being threatened by people I've never met. You want to know?" He walked toward me, backing me up until my legs hit the heavy oak desk. He placed his hands on the desk on either side of me, trapping me. "I am moving something on Sunday. Yes. It is a server, a database, one that contains the names of every corrupt politician and trafficker in this city. Silas and his friends, they are on that list. I am not shipping drugs. I am shipping the evidence that will burn their empire to the ground." My breath hitched. You're taking them down?" "I am cleaning the board," he whispered. "But to do that, I need them to think I am distracted. I need them to think I am soft. I need them to think I am so focused on my new, beautiful fiancé and my big fancy party that I have forgotten about the port. So I am a distraction," I said, tears pricking my eyes. "It was all a lie. The job is real," he said, intense. The danger is real. But my feelings. He paused, looking at my lips. I could have picked anyone for this, Maya. I could have hired an actress. I didn't. Why? I breathed. Because when I saw you in that bar, looking like you wanted to shatter the world, I recognized you. You have the same darkness in you that I have. You just haven't let it out yet. He leaned in, his forehead resting against mine. Silas made a mistake approaching you. He thinks you are a weakness. Adrian reached into his drawer and pulled out a small, heavy object. He took my hand and placed it in my palm. It was cold steel. A small, snub-nosed revolver. Make him regret it, Adrian whispered. I don't know how to use this, I said, staring at the gun. You have 2 days until the gala, he said, stepping back and buttoning his jacket. Lev will teach you, because on Saturday night, I can't watch you every second. And if Silas comes near you again. His eyes turned to ice. You don't wait for me. You handle it. 2 days. That's how long it takes to learn that a gun is heavier than it looks, that safety catches are tricky, and that I have a surprisingly steady hand when I'm terrified. Lev took me to a private range in the basement of the building. He didn't speak much. He just taught me how to aim, how to breathe, and how to not hesitate. You do not shoot to scare, Lev told me, his face grim. You shoot to stop. Now it was Saturday night. The gala. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in the master bedroom. The woman staring back at me was a stranger. Gone was the Maya who wore sensible cardigans and apologized for taking up space. This woman was wearing a custom emerald green gown that clung to every curve like liquid glass. It was backless, daring, and cost more than my parents' house. My hair was swept up, exposing my neck, and strapped to my thigh, hidden beneath the layers of silk, was the cold steel of the snub-nosed revolver. Breathtaking. Adrian appeared behind me in the mirror. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. He looked lethal, beautiful and lethal. He placed a diamond necklace around my throat. It was heavy. It has a tracker inside the setting, he whispered against my ear as he clasped it. If you move more than 50 feet from the main ballroom, my security team gets an alert. Romantic, I said, my voice dry. Practical, he corrected. He turned me around, his hands resting on my waist. Tonight, you are the distraction. All eyes will be on you. Can you handle that? I thought about Julian. I thought about Silas in the alley. I thought about the gun on my leg. I'm ready. The opera house was transformed. My vision had come to life perfectly. Thousands of white hydrangeas, cascading crystal lights, an orchestra playing hauntingly beautiful waltzes. Cameras flashed like lightning as we stepped out of the limousine. Adrian didn't let go of my hand. He guided me up the red carpet with a possessive grip that told every photographer, she is mine. Inside, the room was a shark tank. Senators, CEOs, tech moguls, and scattered among them, men with eyes like Silas, predators in expensive suits that I played my part. I laughed at their jokes. I sipped champagne I didn't taste. I accepted compliments on the decor with a gracious nod. And then I saw him, Julian. He was standing near the bar, looking nervous, wearing a suit that didn't fit quite right. He was alone. When he saw me, he dropped his glass. It didn't break, but the drink splashed over his shoes. He pushed through the crowd toward us. Adrian stiffened beside me, his hand moving slightly toward his jacket. Maya! Julian gaped. He looked me up and down, his eyes bulging. You look expensive, I suggested, my voice cool. What are you doing here? He hissed, glancing at Adrian with fear. This is the governor's table. I planned the event, Julian, I said, taking a sip of my drink. And I'm the host's date. What are you doing here? Did you sneak in? I was invited, he said defensively, by a client. Look, Maya, we need to talk. About the apartment. About Paige. She left me, and... Adrian stepped forward. He didn't touch Julian. He didn't have to. The air around him just seemed to vanish. I thought I made it clear, Adrian said. His voice a low rumble that vibrated in my chest. She is out of your league. and out of your tax bracket. Julian paled. I wanted to apologize. Apologies are for people who make mistakes, Adrian said. You made a choice. Now walk away before I have you removed. Via the balcony. Julian scrambled back, disappearing into the crowd like a rat. I felt a surge of adrenaline. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the victim. I was the one holding the power. Focus, Adrian whispered, squeezing my hand. It's time. He checked his watch. 11 p.m. The shipment is moving now, he murmured. Silas knows. I can see his men moving toward the exits. They're going to try to intercept the server at the docks. So you have to go, I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. I have to lead them away, he said. I'm going to make a scene. Leave through the front. They will follow me. And me. You stay here, in the spotlight, where it's safe. Lev is at the door. He cupped my face. For a second, the mask dropped. He looked terrified, not for himself, but for me. Do not leave this room, Maya. I will come back for you when it is done. He kissed me. Hard, desperate, and then turned and walked out of the ballroom. I watched him go. I watched 3 men in dark suits detach from the shadows and follow him. I was alone. I took a breath and turned back to the party, forcing a smile. Just stay in the room, I told myself. Just be the distraction point. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. A waiter bumped into me. So sorry, ma'am, he mumbled. He shoved a napkin into my hand and hurried away. I looked down at the napkin. Written in jagged scrawl were 2 words. Kitchen. Now. And below it, a picture. It was a grainy printout, but I recognized it instantly. It was my parents, sitting at a cafe in Italy. A timestamp from today was in the corner. My blood turned to ice. Silas didn't just want the server. He had leverage. I looked at the door where Lev was standing. If I told him, he would call Adrian. Adrian would turn around. The ambush would work. Silas would win. I touched the necklace, the tracker. If I left, Adrian would know. But my parents, I made a choice. I didn't go to Leviticus. I slipped through the crowd, moving toward the service entrance. I unclasped the diamond necklace and dropped it into a potted plant near the stage. I was on my own. I pushed into the kitchen. It was chaotic, chefs shouting, steam rising. No one noticed the woman in the green dress slipping into the back hallway. The hallway was quiet. Concrete walls. Flickering lights. Hello, I called out, my voice echoing. You're punctual, a voice said. I turned. Silas was standing at the end of the corridor. He was smiling, but he wasn't alone. Held by the collar, looking beaten and bruised, was Julian. I told you, Silas said, pulling a knife and holding it to Julian's throat. I knew you were a soft spot. Let him go, I said, my hand drifting to the slit in my dress. He's nothing to me. Oh, I know he's nothing, Silas laughed. He's bait. I knew you wouldn't come for him, but I knew you'd come for the threat against your parents. He shoved Julian to the floor. Julian groaned, curling into a ball. Adrian is already dead, Silas lied. I hoped he was lying. My men intercepted him 3 blocks away. Now I need the codes to the server. Adrian said only 2 people have the biometrics. Him and his new partner. Silas stepped closer. Give me the codes, Maya, or I start cutting pieces off your ex-fiancé until you remember them. I looked at Julian, bleeding on the floor. I looked at Silas. I realized then that Adrian hadn't just given me a job. He had given me a role. And tonight I wasn't the event planner. I reached for my thigh. I don't have the codes, I said, my voice steady. Silas sneered. Then you're useless. He raised the knife. I drew the revolver. The weight of it was familiar now. No, I said, leveling the barrel at his chest. I'm the insurance. Silas froze. His eyes widened. He hadn't expected the socialite to be packing heat. You won't shoot, he scoffed, taking a step forward. You're a party planner. Bang. I fired. I didn't aim for his chest. I aimed for the floor, inches from his expensive Italian loafers. The concrete exploded, sending debris into his shin. Silas yelled and stumbled back. "The next one is between your eyes," I said. My ears were ringing, but my hand was rock steady. "Get on your knees." Silas looked at me, hate burning in his eyes, but he slowly lowered himself to the ground. "You're making a mistake," he spat. "Adrian is a monster." "Maybe," I said, "but he's my monster." I heard footsteps running down the hall behind me. Heavy, fast footsteps. I didn't turn. I kept the gun on Silas. "Maya!" It was Adrian. He burst into the hallway, his tuxedo torn, blood on his collar. Not his own. Lev and 2 others were with him. Adrian took in the scene instantly. Julian on the floor. Silas on his knees. Me holding the gun like a queen of the underworld. That he walked past me, kicked the knife away from Silas, and motioned for Lev to take out the trash. Then he turned to me. He didn't say a word. He looked at the gun, then up to my eyes. A look of fierce, terrifying pride crossed his face. He reached out and gently took the weapon from my hand, engaging the safety. "I told you to stay in the room," he whispered, but he was pulling me into his chest, burying his face in my neck. He was shaking. He threatened my parents. I mumbled against his ruined jacket. "We have them secure," Adrian said. "My team in Italy picked them up an hour ago. They are safe." I sagged against him, the adrenaline finally crashing. "Is it over?" I asked. Adrian looked down at Julian, who was looking up at us with wide, terrified eyes. Then he looked at Lev dragging Silas away. "The business is over," Adrian said. He scooped me up into his arms, carrying me bridal style toward the exit. "But us," he kissed my forehead. "We are just getting started."